the LIFT board meeting to order. Today is Thursday, February 14, 2019. It is 6:32. Happy Valentine's Day. We'll start with the roll call. Carol Brezhak.
Present.
Cindy Christensen.
Here.
Jason Henderson.
Present.
William Hopping.
Here.
Joseph Farino.
Here.
Jack Reinchecke.
Here.
Kevin Seiler is here. Patrick Driscoll is unable to attend. Tiffany Wooten will not be with us tonight, and neither will Stephen Kemp. We would like to welcome our neighbors who have joined us either in person or online. I do, before we let go next, add a meeting agenda item. Under committee reports, I would like to have the lawyer selection update there, so Joseph can give us an update on what's happening there. Can I have a motion to add that to the agenda?
I move we add the lawyer selection subcommittee report to the agenda.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next thing is the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our January 10th, 2019 meeting? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the public comment session. We invite those in attendance who wish to come forward and share their thoughts or concerns with us. Do so at this time. Again, please state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to come forward and address the board? Pam?
Thank you, LaFleur, for listening to people in the public and me. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I'm a block and a half from here. And thank you for showing up on Valentine's Day. I remember that was perhaps a costly choice for some members. Appreciate your presence tonight. So I wanted to mention a couple of things. If I were on this authority, I would want to be learning about Columbine Square and the use to which it's put, and the Bellevue corridor. And specifically, again, we have this market analysis and void analysis and gap analysis for the type of businesses that could go there by our city staff in July. So we have the expertise here, we paid for the tools, we paid for the analysis. I would want to be learning about the uses that are likely to succeed at Columbine Square and the ones that might not. And I'm still looking forward to that study session, that agenda item. Our guys are right upstairs. I'm sure they'd be eager to talk about their work on this. I will recognize that the Bellevue Corridor vision was done, and it shows a huge infill development there of 300 residential. I'm going to say that responds to the limited current market, and the job of this board and the city is to not respond to market forces. You should be looking, we should be looking, all of us, at 3-4 market cycles, 24, 30 years. Cities don't respond to market cycles, markets respond to market cycles. Markets are only a tool. If we respond to the market cycle, we lose everything, and that's what happens to mediocre cities. That's what has happened in the past. So, putting residential there, another thing is there are planning tools that help us estimate from land use, square footage in the whole city or an area, the impact on the city budget. You can totally estimate whether, what happens to revenue versus expenses. And we know that residential will cost more, and retail will bring income. So that this is, we know which direction it goes. We need to quantify that. I think I would like to know that, and you are the folks who can request that. So I just wanted to mention those things. To me, these are study items that need to be ongoing. I would like every meeting to hear some study item about the uses for Columbine Square and along Bellevue Corridor. So that's my request, and I just thought I think I've mentioned some of it before, and I just thought I'd refresh it. Again, thanks for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wish to come forward? Okay, seeing none, we will close this session of public comment. The next thing is the financial report. Tiffany couldn't be here tonight. It is attached. Is there a motion to accept the report as presented in our packet?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, should we instead just wait for Tiffany to...
We can, if we don't get a motion or the motion gets voted down, we can wait till the next meeting if Tiffany is here.
Would you entertain a motion to table the issue until next month?
Yeah, I can entertain that too.
It would be tabled till next month.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. So we'll table that until next meeting, and hopefully Tiffany will be able to join us. Committee reports. We'll start with the application document review committee, subcommittee, and turn it over to Jack and primarily Jack and Jason.
Not Jason.
And
Cindy.
Oh, Cindy's, no.
No, I'm not on that one. Carol.
Carol.
I'm sorry.
I thought there were three on that. There's only two.
Carol and Joe.
Joe.
I apologize.
So you're on, okay, your turn, okay, sorry.
Running out of people.
And what are you doing, Bill? You need to be on something.
Keeping track.
Keeping track, because I can't seem to keep track, so I'll turn it, I think Jack's will take the lead on that.
Yeah. Ms. Brejack and I met and after the February 4th deadline, and I did receive comments, or we did receive comments from virtually everybody on the board, and unfortunately, Mr. Areno couldn't join us. So we went through the January 10th draft, marked it up. I went back to my trusty computer, put it all together. The big changes are we deleted, well, we cleaned up everything because we had a lot of comments about syntax and English and format and all that. You know, after you proof it so many times, it all just kind of glazes over, so we appreciate that. The big changes, we eliminated a whole section that talked about what we do when things are off-site, outside of a urban renewal area. We didn't think that was quite appropriate. If somebody gets an older version of it and thinks we should do it, but the language was poorly crafted in our opinion. And if we were to craft that part of it again, we would want to have our own counsel review that to make sure the procedure and what we were doing met the test of the law. The other things that we really tried to clean up is, we got a comment that stated we would like to see this application process be simpler. So would we. Unfortunately, it's a pretty complex deal. However, I do want to point out that if you look at page 4, line 37, it talks about those project developers who have questions about the process or desire technical assistance, that they can contact us anytime. And I would assume, since we do not have an executive director, they would contact the chairman or the vice chairman just to sit down and talk about, okay, this is what we have proposed, or we want to propose. This is what we're going to need, just kind of in general terms. What's our procedure going forward? So I think that might solve that, let's make this simpler kind of deal, that people can contact us orally and just have a chit chat about that. Other than that, when they start putting down their 10 grand for a formal application, it gets spelled out, and it's a lot of work. Those of you that haven't been construction lenders, this is about what a construction lender looks at, a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's pretty complex. It's not an easy thing to do. So it's about the best we can do to try to simplify this thing, other short of saying, well, we don't need this stuff, we'll go this step, this step, this step, but basically, we need somebody that can accept all the formal application. You know, hire the analysis or get the analysis done, come back to us as this application process talks about. We review it, get comments from the public, and see, and then at that point, we have a resolution that says we either go forward or we don't. And going forward would mean that we have a renewal or redevelopment agreement. So that's kind of where we stand right now. It's still not a final document. And Carol, do you have anything to add?
I think one of the things that we determined at this point is we've worked it and reworked it and then reworked it. If there's some suggestions tonight, we'd be happy to take them. But I think where we are is that this should remain a draft until we have our attorney that can go over it and help us with anything that he or she might find difficult in the language.
So I'd like to speak to, and actually, and I will give credit to Bill on this because he kind of raised this. And as I've talked about it and thought about it, I think what we want to, what I think Bill, when he brought this up to me was, and I kind of agree with him, is that some sort of maybe a pre-application. What I mean by that is, so, and I'll use Columbine Square as an example, and everything I'm saying is purely hypothetical. This is not on the table. This is nothing to say. So let's say the owners of Columbine Square come forward and they say, this is our proposal. Let's say that we take the current initial proposal that's out there right now, and yet we want to build a rec center, and we want $50 million from you. So the first question I'm asking is, well, do you have zoning? Today they don't have zoning. So I would not want us to go forward getting all this, having them do and put them through this if city council, zoning, and all that stuff has not worked through any of that stuff. The other thing is, and this is an issue, especially with this project, and Jack, you and I have talked about this in the past. If they want $50 million, we're not going to be able to bond that because we're getting into year 5, and getting something bonded for $50 million on a project like this is probably going to be very slim. Let's say they come to us a year from now, if they get their zoning, and zoning takes a year to do all that. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So, first blush, we look at this and say, they want $50 million. I don't think we're going to be able to bond that out or to support that. So we would reject it and say, sorry. But if they come to us and say, okay, we only want $2 million for the city to buy this land and turn it into a park. Okay, that's doable. That's something we can actually talk about and say, okay, yeah, we're interested. Let's start talking about these other things we want in that proposal. And that's what I'm just saying is, before they go through all this or get intimidated by this, we have maybe a 2-page thing saying, flesh out, what are you looking for? Before we get into your financials and whether we think you this, what are you looking for? And at first review, we can say, is this something we're interested in doing? It could be something, again, if they don't have zoning, there's no part in us even having that discussion until they get through that part. That's kind of where I'm just thinking, just to simplify it, and it's kind of sort of like what the city's going through. They put out they put out this proposal right now, and they start getting some feedback on whether or not it'd be acceptable before they go and hire get all their stuff ducks in a row on, with the current proposal that's out there.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. The city goes out and.
I mean, the developer, who owns the property, not the city, the developer
The
itself.
developer comes in with a project.
Right. I mean, like they've
pre-application
thrown out
process.
this pre-vision of what they want Columbine Square to look like. And the city hasn't said yes or no. I mean, there's already comments on it from the citizens and the neighbors in that area. But, that's where they get the initial feedback. Okay, maybe we need to go back before we really put pen to paper and figure out how this works. I mean, that's just,
Yeah, and I would build on that because to me, this is very intimidating. And I think part of our job is our charge from council is to have urban renewal happen. And if you give somebody this kind of an application, I think it's daunting to someone. I've looked at other cities' applications, and some of them are actually quite simple. And it doesn't mean that you don't get all this stuff eventually, but it should be a stepped process. So we should have something in addition to this. This may be our guide, and it may be something that when somebody comes in and says, hey, look, if you go all the way through the process, this is the kind of information we want. Here are the steps. And just like any real estate project, you don't get the whole bucket of water thrown at you at once. And I think that's exactly what it would do, is douse the fire. So that's why I brought up the suggestion that we simplify the initial phases of this process. We want to be transparent in what we want in the long run, but we're not asking for construction documents when we don't know if the concept's going to be approved. Let's go one step at a time with this.
Well,
Makes a lot more sense.
The reason I brought that up in the 2 points, because I figured this would be a hot button issue. The question I have is, okay, developer wants to have an informal discussion. Is that going to cost us money? Do you want who is the developer going to talk to?
This board or the community development department actually is where they start.
There's two different processes
Yeah,
that you're talking about. There's a
exactly.
city process and there's an urban renewal process.
Right.
And it's one of the things I've been begging for this board to do for a long time, is to really sort all of this out and determine, because there is a pre-application process that a developer would go through at the city level. So they go through it at the city level. Then if they get the green light or feel like they haven't had too many roadblocks and they want to come to us, then they can come to us. It doesn't cost them anything to come here and sit down. But when they file an application, then they're serious. And we are too, and it should be rigorous because they're asking for a lot of taxpayer money. But I think there are steps that get taken before they come and start getting into all of this. And the zoning is another issue, because urban renewal, the way the law's written, they can come in here and we really like what you want to do. It needs new zoning, and you write that new zoning into the plan. And when it goes through the process at the city level, that zoning is approved as the plan is being approved. But because we don't have a project, we've got kind of the horse in front of the cart, the cart behind the horse. I don't know. We haven't done things in the right step. And it's always been a question for me, does the developer go through a zoning process, because that's expensive and time consuming, and then come to us counting on getting increment, and then go through this process and determine that the impact report isn't going to give him what he needs to pursue the project. So it's a dicey situation for any developer coming in.
Usually this stuff is worked out before you even, they've got things worked out before you even declare an area an urban renewal zone. So they have the whole 25 years or almost 25 to bond it out and so forth. As I understand it, as I look at what other cities are doing, they have an idea. And that hasn't happened here. You know, there is no idea. But the other thing is, and just using Columbine Square, that property owner could go back and change their project that conforms to the current zoning. They don't have to go to city council, they don't have to do anything else, they say, here's our project, it conforms with the zoning. But as part of that, we want some urban renewal, whatever that is. Again, depending on what they're asking for, if they're asking for $50 million, we only have 20 and a half years left on this. Can we bond out $50 million with the tax increment we think we would generate off of a project? Probably not. And I think that's kind of why I'm just saying first blush, you know, is that something we want to look at first, or have it somewhere spelled out a little bit clearer? I mean, I have to reread what's been put in here. That they do sit down and talk to us with a plan, you know, before they submit this. But that's the first step. I don't want it to be, we don't want it to say, here, don't talk to us until you fill this out.
And I don't think anybody's saying that.
No, I don't think so either. But, you know, if they just go to the website and like, oh, damn, I gotta do this, well, let's rethink that. You know, they want X amount of money up front. I'm not sure about that. Either a shorter application that's a little bit clearer, just a pre-application, or something that spells out, we encourage, you know, that you sit down with us and have a discussion before we go into this.
Unbeknownst to you, on one of these drafts that I didn't show you, prior to formal submittal requirements on page 4, I wrote another paragraph, informal submittal requirements. And I used those words that you just used. The board encourages project developers to come informally meet with the chairman and our vice chairman. Of course, we don't want to have an open records meeting kind of deal, so only 2 of us at a time, to discuss the process and the potential for going forward. It was short and sweet like that. And no money would exchange hands. It's the formal submittal requirements where we want money on barrelhead. I took it out because I thought it was presumptuous of me to propose that the chairman and or vice chairman give up their valuable time during the month to talk to the project developer.
And in fact, you were brilliant.
You're ahead of your time.
And if I hear that that's the case, that's all I have to do to submit in here for that. But then the question is, okay, are you going to, after you have those discussions, are you going to bring those discussions up with the board in general? And particularly if the developer says, we would really not like to have this, but I don't know how you go forward. So that means the rest of the board will not know what you've done, because you can't tell us. And so that kind of got hung up there. But if I were a developer, I'd certainly want to go in like if I wanted a construction loan, I'd go into a bank and I'd certainly sit down and talk with the lender. But when the lender gives me a commitment letter and I have to pay a fee up front, then I know I'm serious. Well, that's what we want. Mm-hmm. We want some seriousness put in here. But if the consensus here is that I should write something in called Step 1 or informal submittal requirements or whatever else and try to outline that, I'd be happy to insert that in there. All it is just finding out one of my older versions and
Yeah.
you know.
Maybe steps in timing is what you're talking about there then, Jack. And I think that, you know, when they first come in, we're trying to feel each other out. You know, this is something they can do, and what do they get for that tech grant?
Yeah.
You know, what do they get from us?
What's causing some concern in my head is we do not have an executive director. And if we did, every time the executive director picks up the phone or whatever else, the clock starts ticking on our money. Is that the best use of the public funds at the time of informal? to pay an executive director to sit down and chit chat with a potential developer for an hour or whatever it takes and then come report to us. That'd be the best deal if we had a full-time executive director. But part-time, which we don't have right now, the best way I can see us doing it would be to have contact with our, elected executives to do that and come back.
I think we can push, because there's going to be, what I would recommend is that they reach out to the chair or his or her designee. And that designee could be at some point in time, we may decide that we need a part, like the lift board had before, they had a part-time person. There's other things we can talk about on how those procedural things get handled. But we could just do, that would, I think, address that. Where they would reach out to me, and if we decided that either we've contracted with an individual or come up with some way that somebody's going to handle that kind of procedural thing for us, they can sit down and talk to that person and then report back to us their findings.
We could say chair or executive director, and then we'd have an executive director. That would be the person, but without one, it would be the chair.
Yeah. But I'm also thinking our designee could be any one of us too.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So we could leave it, if we left it open. Because right now, we're trying to feel our way around. That's why I had all those charts when we first started this process, what our process is. I'm still not quite sure what our process is.
I don't either.
And, I'd like to revisit those charts too, because I think it would help all of us to understand, at a certain point in time, what's going on and what we need to do as a board so that we're not making a mistake and having to go back or whatever else that we have to do. But I can certainly put that in for the next meeting.
Jack, with your experience, I don't know if you've had experience with urban renewal, but if I were a developer, and particularly if I had previous urban renewal experience, I would have a pretty good idea what kind of increment this project would create. And I don't think I would come in asking for more than what I thought I could get through the collection of increment for the 20 remaining years or the 18, whatever it might be. Is that a reasonable statement? Or?
That's a reasonable assumption, but, the example that Kevin gave us is fair too. We could have all kinds of things come in, and you might not have the experience. You might have the experience, but they don't know what our financial capacity is. And they don't know whether we can get a tax increment agreement on sales tax with the city. That's the wild card. And if we can get that, probably would increase our ability to issue bonds or issue debt of some kind. But on the other hand,
And the other part of this, if you take Columbine Square, they're not, the owners of that are not a Colorado company. They're in California. And the people, they deal with different, if they're people who are dealing with these type of things in multiple jurisdictions and states, every state's different, So they may not, they have a vague idea of what it should be, but they may not know the particulars with Colorado, what the statute is and what you can and can't do. And I think it's up to us to, within the statute, say, okay, what can we do? What do we want? What do we need? And then we go from there. But the other part of this also is what are we comfortable with? I'm not going to assume somebody walks in here with a fancy PowerPoint presentation and says, well, we think this project's going to generate X amount of tax increment or sales tax increment, all this other stuff, and then we end up with another project where Dish Network resides. Again, we want to do our due diligence. We got to make sure we get the right people on board to look at it. I'm going to want to look at it differently than, I'm not going to just take somebody walking in here and believe their numbers, you know what I'm saying? You know, yeah, they should know,
No.
but you don't know what how they're being too optimistic, too conservative.
Well, and that's exactly the reason the direction I was going, is that if someone comes in and we think it's somewhat reasonable, we really don't know until we have expended some money to get somebody that does this kind of thing for a living. And of course, you have to have an impact report as part of what you're doing anyway, so don't tell them like the present thing to get it together. But the minute we start investing money into a project, I think there needs to be a line drawn that if we step over that line, then they need to pay for those efforts, because we're going to have to hire it out.
Correct. But I think what I'm trying to get at is, what is that part before we have to, where's that line drawn? Where's the conversation? You know, if they come in here, if they were to come, you know, somebody were to pick up the phone and call me tomorrow and say, we've got this great plan. Okay, do you have zoning? I mean, again, because if they don't have zoning, I'm not, you know, we work with the city in trying to get what the city wants to have in that space. And we may think a project is great, and if the city doesn't think it's great, then we've just wasted a lot of time and money. We're partnering with them, we're appointed by them, we're here for the citizens, we're here to try to do urban renewal, but it's in conjunction with them. And I'm not going to be looking to do a project that I don't feel the city is behind.
And I think we need to have that process. And Bill, you've had experience with this. To me, it's really difficult for someone to come in here who does not have their zoning, and ask them to go through that entire process.
Right.
And then come and find out they can't get the gap financing that they need. The other way to do it is to come to us, and we write the urban renewal modification to the plan, and you put everything that you need in there, including the zoning, and then it goes through. And at that point, you've got a plan that this body has approved. We've approved the increment, and now all we have to do is get the city council to approve it, and then they're ready to go. But there's, to me, if I were a developer, this is a very difficult process, because how it was never set up properly. So I think if we really are serious about this, we need to come up with, do they go through a pre-application process? If it passes that, then they have the option of doing a P3 or P4 or whatever it is.
Yes.
And then do they come in to us and talk about a plan where they need some rezoning done and we write it in, or do they sidestep us and go through that route?
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, this may be something, I mean, we've got the breakfast with city council coming up. I think this is something, one of the things we talk about with them. How do they see it?
Yeah.
You know, again, I think it's something we have to work with them. Again, you know, we don't want to go through a lot of work to have city council not against it, or vice versa. You know, if city council says, hey, we think this is a great idea, and we don't, I think there needs to be more conversation between both entities, so we are more or less on the same pages, and it's just working out maybe the differences we see in certain aspects of a project.
And if it goes through the process in the other room first and then comes to us, our roles are very different. It's just finance at that point. Whereas if they come to us first, then we have to look at the comp plan and design requirements and all of that other stuff and incorporate that into the plan along with the financing.
And a lot of that is process and sequence flexibility, I think, because as you mentioned, Carol, if it comes in one way, it's a totally different process and sequence than if it comes in another way.
Right.
So we have to have that in there. That's why I was just saying this feels rigid to me. I'd like to have some explanation somewhere, be it on the website or prior to this or whatever, that explains that. You know, this is an application. This is everything that we think we may need in the process. Perhaps. I mean, maybe we aren't going to, if it's a roller skating rink, maybe we don't care so much about some of these things. You know, it depends on what's proposed. So this is an exhaustive laundry list, and that's what I'm saying. We have to have that flexibility built into the introduction of this to somebody who's coming into this without experience with the city of Littleton. So they need to have kind of a roadmap, and they need to know that we don't know if we're going to take the road less traveled or not. But, this is kind of what the opportunity is laying there. So that's why I think this is a little bit daunting right here. And I'm not so sure that we shouldn't take a look at the process and sequence step first. And that could be right exactly. Maybe we want to, defer on this right now until we have the opportunity to get that clarification with council. Because I think this has really been a productive exercise. And I thank you for all the work you've put into it, because it's identified a lot of the lack of process and sequence that we have in place.
Yes.
And as a lender, you know that varies a lot by the kind of deal you're looking at.
Because I can look at this set of documents that we have, and I just check the ones, if somebody came in and wanted a preliminary analysis of it, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 documents I really want that really tell me about the project and whether I want to do it or not.
But it doesn't say that here.
And I don't have, so, we could look at it this way. We have an informal, no cash on the table. And then we have a two-part, we split. One, either you've been to council, this is what we're going to need. We don't have to judge the project or anything like that. The project's set in stone, that's it. We're just going to figure out if we got enough financial capacity to do what they want us to do.
Yeah.
Or two, they come to us before council, and then we kind of end up being, if we approve the project, a advocate for the change in zoning.
Shepherd. Makes sense.
Champion, shepherd, you can use it, but think one way or the other, we help the developer get it through the city. So that's a different process. So then the application is multifaceted, which is what you're getting at. But I can also see that where somebody comes in and wants a new urban renewal area, and that's the third thing that's hanging out there that we don't have something.
Total different ballgame, yeah.
And so that means we go potential for eminent domain and all that kind of other stuff.
That's a possibility.
I know, but you have to kind of be looking at that as a possibility, even no matter remote, because it's within the law.
Yeah, it's within the law.
Right, and I think the other thing is that this, in talking with council, and I can see where some municipalities have done where the people on the urban renewal board are city council members, so that the vision is more unified when these projects come out, it's easier. If this is the route we're gonna go, we have to figure out, okay, how do we have a communication or dialogue with city council? Because we wouldn't wanna go through all this exercise to have it land on to them and to have them feel like, okay, you're forcing this down. Whether we're the ones at the table, there's a whole different, 7 people here and they may have a different agenda, whatever it is. I'm just saying, we just gotta find what are the mechanisms do we communicate so we know what our efforts are gonna come to at the end, be successful.
Oh, we can't do that.
You
We can't be trying to orchestrate how
What-
things are gonna happen at the county,
No.
the city council level.
That's not what I'm advocating. What I'm advocating is, if they take the route where they're gonna come through us and we're gonna look at the zoning, and we propose modifying the zoning. I wouldn't want that to get to city council that is totally against what the zoning is.
Yeah.
Or what their vision is. I wouldn't want to be, like if they could do a master plan for this area and this is how it looks, a developer comes in, we like what they're doing, and it doesn't match that master plan and and what they see, I wouldn't want us to be getting into that type of a conflict.
Yeah, and I think the law actually says we have to adhere to the comp plan, so we shouldn't be in that situation. And then the planning commission, of course, would catch that, and they make a recommendation, or they don't, to the city council. But what do you have in that, Phil?
Because you never know. You never know. I mean, look at
They recently had a thing where it was appealed and it
Yeah.
got overruled.
But
I
if
mean,
we're doing
housing
our
use.
job, we are supposed to make sure that whatever project comes forward actually works with the comp plan and the design requirements that have been set out.
Absolutely,
So if
yeah.
we've done our job, we shouldn't be worried about what happens down 2 steps away from here. And
in theory, that's all
Yeah.
well and good.
An open line of communication helps
Yeah.
ensure that.
well,
And that's what- yeah.
they know what's going on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because through I forget if it's 3 Ps or 4 Ps, but the system they have in place now, where it's worked through with staff a fair amount, and they do get an introduction, a non-binding introduction to council, it could be that we have a cooperative look at that type of thing. So
We've been
it
able to
may,
hijack their process.
we don't want to hijack it.
Well, no, hijack, use their city's pre-application process.
Oh, you mean it? Yeah, okay.
Use the
Yeah.
P4 process.
Sure.
So that becomes one of the steps that a project person has to go through. And they would get a real good feel about how they
Yeah,
were
sure.
being received at that level before they ever come here. City has the staff to do that. We don't.
Right.
So-
So we could, we could have.
We can have a cooperative
We could have a
agreement.
cooperative agreement of some sort to get that accomplishment, so that we're walking down the path together with these people, because we don't, it's a great disservice to an applicant and to the citizens of the city to have these walking along in a way that is, got a fuse in it. We don't want them to blow up at the last minute, because we haven't given everybody the opportunity to see if the other people are on the page, and we're very clear about compliance with the comp plan, compliance with design requirements, compliance with economic need, and economic performance. So that's where the process and sequencing, I think, have to be an important part of the foundation that we lay in front of the people. So and maybe this comes later. Maybe we have that process, the sequence laid out first. And it helps us understand it.
I'm getting back to Jack's charts that you started out with. I mean, it happens in a lot of different things. And I mean, I've seen it happen in development type projects. It's like, if this, then you go here. And if it's not that, then you go down.
Right.
And that time. So if it needs zoning, then you have to go down here and get your zoning and go through city council. And if not, then, you can come over to us. And then, the process goes like this, and then it ends up maybe with something like that, where if you go through all the steps, now you're ready to do the full application. I mean, I'm just kind of seeing the whole step thing going back to the charts, and I mean, I've seen that in a lot of different things in planning departments and that type of thing.
I know, because the reason I did the charts is so I could kind of understand what the process is.
Yeah, sure.
But I think we need to make some more charts. And then I certainly need feedback, or we need feedback, to make sure that we get it right, because, I know pretty much what's going to happen after we get all these documents, but I don't know what's going to happen prior to what the city is going in, how the back and forth is going to go. And, we generally count on having a member of the council here with us that we could take stuff back. But since we're just amongst ourselves tonight, it's pretty easy, and I'm glad we got this discussion, because this has been very enlightening and very helpful.
If I may, it does remind me of what, it sounds like the next step that we're asking Jack to do is try to add in, there's several things we've talked about as proposals, but the first immediate proposal, if I'm understanding it, is for Jack to try to put in a step that is about this informal thing that is literally a conversation in the same way that I might call up a bank and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this building over here. What do you think? Do you think this will work? Do you think it's something you can do? And he goes, no, I don't think that's something I can do. Or, yeah, it sounds good. Why don't you come in and we'll talk more formally? Or a university, like, do you think this kid is going to be? No, I don't think this kid's going to make it. Then you don't go through the process.
Yeah.
But that's super valuable, and I think that's a place to start, is getting that.
But I also think, what is the process? Is there two process? I mean, because it sounds like there's two processes. There's a process where they can just come to us, lay out their plan, ask us to help them with zoning and all that other stuff written into it, and then that goes to city council and on through that process. Or they go to city council, they get all the zoning, and then they just come to us and say, we want you to finance.
I do agree that sounds like
It's-
a bifurcated process.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and maybe that's something we need to map out for somebody who's interested, either on our website saying, understand, these are the process you can go through. And then I think we have to have a discussion with city council that they understand, or they'll be supportive if someone takes the path of, I'm gonna go through the urban renewal with my zoning request and everything else I need in a total package that comes to you later on. Because if city council says, you know what, if you do that, we're gonna vote it down, then that's not an option. I mean, legally we can do it, but the point is, why would we go through that exercise for nothing?
Because you might have a developer that has an attorney that says that they want to use that process, and that's what the law allows them to do.
It may allow them, but then we still have the right to say, we're not supportive of this project in that process.
I don't know that we have a right to say we're not supportive of the process. We can't determine that we're going to say no to a project because they're not using the process that the city council supports. We have to take the project on its face value. And if they come in here and want to use the process the way it's laid out in the law, I don't see how we have a choice but to do what the law says we're supposed to do.
That's why we need advice from an attorney
Yes.
when the time comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're not being forced, no developer can force us to do something.
I don't think they can force us. I think we can say, we're not interested.
We're not interested.
We're not interested. I don't think they can say, you have to do this.
Just say no.
Yeah. I think what statute says is that this is the process that you can do this. Doesn't say you have to, I mean, if you're gonna do urban renewal, this is the way you do it. Just because someone says, I wanna go through the process, says, well, we're not interested in going through the process with you. I think that's still our right to do that as a board. I'm not sure we can be forced to go through a process that we're not supportive of.
Even if they pay us to do, would offer to pay us to do it, I don't think we can either. I think if somebody came in here and said, we'd like, if let's say we're the loan committee in a bank, somebody came in and said, I want this loan, and you're gonna give it to me, and I'm gonna pay you the fees up front.
It's a little different.
Pretty good
As
system.
much as that's true, I think you need some semblance of a process that they go through in the beginning so that it's fair and everyone's treated equally. And whether that's meeting with somebody in a small, short proposal, and then they talk about, okay, we're not interested, so everybody goes, there's some criteria, some decision made, then I think that's probably correct. It's not just, somebody's going to call the chair and then he's going to just say he has like the voice of the person on the phone and I mean, that would be a problem that we're
Yes,
talking about.
that would-
So,
no,
so-
that's-
but it's still, even if it's simple, some kind of process yeah.
Everybody supported the same way.
Yes.
Exactly.
Even if there's a proposal, they want to go to that, and let's just say, because it's a hot button in Littleton is, they want to put a 10-story, high-density apartment building on that lot. Do any of us want to say, oh, sure, we support that?
Jason.
Okay.
Don't look at me.
Just say that we should go to the comp plan and take a look at what it is, and we got to look at the Bellevue corridor plan. We can't make an arbitrary decision. We have got to do our due diligence as well. So we've got to go back to the planning documents and see what they support. And if it supports a 10-story apartment building, then we take the next step. If it doesn't, then we're sorry, our plan only says 5 stories. So you need to modify your project in order for us to be able to consider, because it does not comply with the comp plan.
Well, aren't we rewriting our comp plan right now?
We are in the midst, but we also have the Bellevue corridor vision that was just approved, and that's the guiding document at the moment until the comp plan is complete, and that's the process that's down the road yet.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while.
It's, I mean.
But we could advise somebody, if somebody came in with something that was truly, you're advising somebody, I don't advise that you spend $10,000 because I don't think this is going to fly. I think, a reasonable developer might go, oh, that this guy Kevin sounds like he knows what he's talking about, and he wouldn't spend the $10,000. I think that's because we just said that we don't want people going through the process if they're guaranteed not to come out on the other end. But you're exactly right. We have to treat it with seriousness.
Maybe we could come up with a process similar like the P4 that council and planning commission is using, where it's just an informal, where, in the way the council and planning commission do it, they do not let the developer address the governing bodies. They have a staff member represent the developer and just kind of gives an overview. This is what they want to do, and this is kind of what the zoning is currently, and this is the variances that they want. And then the council and the planning commission make their comments. The developer's in the room, he hears it. So he decides that he can either overcome those or he can't. And some of the P4 process, we've seen the developer walk away and never come back. We've seen them progress through, and they adjust. So perhaps we could come up with something like that in a way of a process for someone prior to getting, to they've come and talked to you, or if we have an exec director, and gosh, this might work, then come in and do an informal something or another.
But that means we have to have staff, and from my viewpoint, I want some money to pay for that staff.
Yeah.
Because we don't, otherwise, taking money out of the pool of funds that we have, I just don't think is the proper thing to do as a fiduciary.
Jack, how would you feel if this developer went through a pre-application process with the city, and we had a city staff member come and present to the group on behalf of the developer like they do for the planning commission and the city council? So that means we're using city staff, which can be might be a conflict at some point, but at this point I don't think so. And let them present, give us an overview of what the current zoning is and whatever the parameters are that they're concerned about and how this project would meet, exceed, or fall short.
Well, this would be something I'd ask city council, would they do that for free for us?
Right.
That's the question
Right.
in my mind.
Well, and, if somebody's going to develop something in the city, they need to go through the city process anyway. So the, planning commission is probably going to see it, council will see it. I don't think it's at all. The city staff is bound to do that. That's what they're paid to do.
It depends on which route they take.
Well, if they come to us for,
If they come to us first and we redo the zoning and the plan, the project, then they
We
don't
don't do
go
the
to
zoning.
those bodies first.
we don't do the zoning.
Pardon?
They have to use the existing zoning to come to us first.
No.
It requires a change in zoning.
No, you
Council
can't.
has to do that.
No, that's the beauty of the urban renewal law, is that when you create
Let's
a
get legal
project,
advice on that
you
from-
change the zone, you put it all in there, and then when it proceeds through, it's done.
Well,
They've got their zoning.
I'd like to have that process laid out by the lawyer.
And I think that's part of what we have to
Yeah.
figure this out. What is the process, if that is an option? Because I have questions about that also,
Yeah.
because then, I can see where city council will say, well, wait a minute, you're stepping on our area. But again,
It's the law.
you may be correct. This is where we would ask council, we don't have council here tonight to provide that advice. So that could be something where, once we have an attorney on board, maybe it is that we have a study session, we have a list of things, we could submit to them ahead of time, and we sit down with an hour or so saying, how does this look? How does this work?
That would be good.
I think that's something, that we should do
Yeah.
to help guide us through the steps, because it seems like every time we go into this, we try to solve one problem and we come up with 30 questions, which is all good.
Yeah.
It all leads back to the attorney.
And it does, and some of it stuff is the procedural stuff is we go to the city attorney with. You know, if we, you know, the attorneys that Joe has brought forward, so far, you know, they're experienced in urban renewal, as I understand it, you know, and, you know, they could be, you know, tasked to ask these questions, you know, and can provide us guidance. Okay, anything more on this? So I think we've got more homework to do here. I think, you know, getting some direction from, or advice and some questions, answers by legal would be nice, or needed. I think also sitting down with City Council, which we'll be doing in March, to kind of get their feel on how we should proceed in these areas would be very helpful. You know, we'd want to be on the same page, I think, with them. So I'm not sure there's anything for you to do right now, Jack. You know, I do appreciate everything. You know, you put a lot into this, and when you get into this kind of stuff, it's you don't want to miss anything, and it gets dry and boring, I'm sure.
It's not boring, it's fascinating, but I would suggest the same thing. That, we revisit it 2 months from now, after we've had an opportunity to discuss it with City Council.
Okay.
Because I think an iteration for the March meeting would not be as useful as an iteration after a meeting with the council.
So I think what I would write, we'll table this until our April meeting. I think also, we'll look to set up a date, maybe the first or second week of April, where we set up a study session to talk about what comes, our discussion with City Council. I think we should talk, you know, have a study session about that. And then, and draft some, questions we have for, hopefully we should have our legal team on board by then, and maybe have some draft things so we can do a study session after the April meeting with the attorney and get those questions answered, so we can keep trying to move this forward, and maybe May or June, kind of have this wrapped up. If too many other things don't come up in the process. I mean, that we're this, you know, we may, but I mean, some of the discussions may change how we look at this, you know, and we may have to, it may be two different things, two different documents. You know, there may just be, if we're evaluating just on the financials, this is what we want. If you're looking at the total package and zoning and all that stuff, this is what we want. You could have two different application processes after this whole discussion. Yes, Carol.
Make a statement a little earlier. On this list of documents, it seems so daunting. It is flexible. There is, the Urban Renewal Authority has the option of saying, you know, we only need 6 of these, you know, 1, 2, and 3. So it's not that it's comprehensive. Everybody has to turn in everything. It's just whatever the project deems or calls for that we determine that they need to submit. And I noticed Joseph's got lots of marks on your copy. Do you want to just give a copy of them to us? Or do you want to go through any of it tonight?
I'm gonna find more. These are all like edits, not the kind that we discuss it.
Okay, all right. Do you want to submit them and let us incorporate them?
Yeah, I told Jack that
Okay.
I gave it one read through, and I'm gonna give it another read through.
Okay.
It may substantially change, because from what I heard tonight, I built this on the old documents, the old outline. I think we need a new outline. So I'm going to write an outline and try to come up with some more charts, flow charts.
Okay.
Now, I think we do need to make sure we have a solid understanding of the processes, and what the steps would be in that process. And again, if they're looking for zoning changes, what do we want from that? What are we going to want if that's the path we're looking at? we may look at what does city council and zoning look at when what they're looking for, to consider those. Because then we kind of we now become the zoning board and those type of things. So we want to make sure we're in alignment with what the city's doing overall. Okay. All right, thank you, Jack and Carol and Joseph. The next item then is an update from the law firm, and I will turn it over to Joseph. He has some riveting news.
New and exciting news. Well, Doug Woodland, who was going to be with us tonight, took on a big project, and he's no longer going to be able to accept new clients right now. So he withdrew from the process. I will say that although Doug came highly recommended, Jay and I both really enjoyed our conversation with him. He seems to know urban renewal inside and out. He himself did say his practice tends to be more focused on litigation than transaction. Though he could do the transactional kind of stuff like this stuff without a problem, it's just not been his typical focus. So even though he was a fantastic candidate, I invited him because I thought it would be valuable to see a couple different options, even though it seemed like the first firm that we spoke to might end up being a little more well-suited to our particular needs, at least in the foreseeable future, because we're not foreseeing any litigation.
Trying to avoid that at all costs.
And then Henry Rodriguez obviously can handle litigation or transactions. So I do think that left with one of the firms, it's probably the one that's better suited to our needs. I will note that in the documents you saw that Doug Woodland had a much lower rate. I can explain by the fact that he's a solo practitioner. So he's a one-man shop, so he does everything, all the filing and everything. Whereas in a firm like Henry Rodriguez, it'll be divided among associates and some paralegals from time to time, depending on what the kind of project is. So when you have a big project, your average billing rate is not what you see listed there. So although it still might end up being a little higher than Doug's rate, the disparity isn't, going to be 400 to 285, whatever it was. Henry will average down a little bit because they'll divide up the work. So that said, we don't have a study session tonight, as noted, and we only have Henry Rodriguez as still in the running. We haven't had the opportunity to talk about it, but I'll just briefly say that I was impressed with both of the candidates. I think they know what they're talking about and kind of have a good understanding of what our needs are, and they seemed excited about kind of our needs and the fact that we're building something new and working on developing something. And I have seen their work and firsthand and been involved with it, and it's high quality work. So I wouldn't hesitate to recommend them in my own experience. But I would love to hear what the rest of the board thought about the process and one way or another.
Well, I guess I'll start, since I have an opinion about everything. I agree with you. I mean, before the attorney would show up tonight, I got on the websites and background, and it looked like it was litigation, mostly revolving around eminent domain. That's not what we need right now. What we need is somebody to help us establish our procedures, whatever they may be, and make sure that we mesh properly according to the law with city charter and with state law. And my biggest frustration is we don't have one on board right now. And if it were possible, I would move to retain Rodriguez, but since we're in discussion, I'll hold off on that. But that's, I think, and I was impressed with Rodriguez with the fact that they could do the transactional stuff. And I agree that the fee seems to be reasonable.
I will note, I don't know to what degree that's negotiable. I think it is. I imagine it's a question we can ask them if they can come down on that fee a little bit, if if we feel that's necessary. We did not have that conversation with them.
No, we do not.
Well, I would be inclined to give them a retainer and whatever you negotiate on that, simply because I think it's unfair, no matter who we hire, to not have that money sitting out there that we can call them up and they got something to bill against.
Well, I think what I would like to see is, I mean, we can't, because we added this tonight, we can't have a formal motion on this. What I would recommend is that Joseph reach out to them and come up with what a contract with them would look like, an agreement with them would look like, to bring to our next meeting for consideration. If they don't ask for a retainer and they're okay with that, that's fine. That'd be preferable. But if we could have that discussion and see what, if they want a $20,000 retainer or a $1,000 retainer, it changes the discussion. I think, see that, I would reach out to the city manager, Mark, maybe unless you have something that you want to get a template on what an agreement would look like between us as a governmental agency and a firm like that, because the city had that with Corey's firm
I
a
think
few
I
years
can
ago.
have it.
Well, I mean,
Corey was hired by
Yeah,
the
and-
Urban Renewal Authority.
And I would imagine that they,
they may have some very standard, but yeah. But if, I would just, to keep this moving, because I think, we're getting to a point where we do want to have that discussion. We want to have somebody on board, so in the next couple of months, we can sit down with them and say, we've got these specific questions with urban renewal. I think it'd be money well spent for us to have that discussion with them. So if you could, we could ask you to come back with us next meeting with a proposal, and then maybe it's something we can, if everybody agrees with it, and we can make a move on that and enter into that agreement with them, and just get this behind us and we can start to keep moving forward. Appreciate Jason and Joe. I really appreciate your work on this. It's been, I know it's probably been frustrating for you. We went through the first process and that didn't necessarily work the way we'd liked. Then you went out and you brought these two firms and, didn't work out well either. I think we're still, I don't have any doubts in the ability of this firm. It's not like it's a lesser of two evils or anything like that. I mean, I think you did your due diligence in trying to find us options. I just don't think we have the time to keep looking for options.
yeah, and I don't think.
And what we have on the table, we have a very viable, respected entity here to consider.
Would just use caution on this, though, because from the beginning, this has been talked about as something we only use if the city attorney is conflicted out. Certainly, a lot of the items of process and how things are set up and such can be answered by the city attorney. We don't need to use our own attorney and be running through the funds. And
Right.
I object to you even offering a retainer unless they insist on a retainer. And I think it would be minimized.
I hire attorneys in my job and I would never offer.
No. I mean, if you can get retainers, that's great, but, that's a two-sided equation. They have
Right,
to
and
do both.
if they're not asking for it, then that's fine. But if they are, we can have that discussion. If it's reasonable, we're all comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm not saying no, I just think that, let's just see what they say. And they may just be more comfortable just to say, we can go on this. We want to have discussed, processes on, how much time they want to be, to contact if we need them at a meeting and those type of things, kind of. I don't know if we need, it may not be a bad idea to have them in the contract that, is expected that they will get 72-hour notice that they need to be at a meeting, or whatever they want, so both sides know what the expectations are. That we know we have to tell them so many days in advance. So, it's not fair to them. They probably have a full docket of things that they have to deal with.
Yeah. And
And we want to know these type of things up front. I think the board has said in the past that the engagement with the firm would be through the chair, whoever the chair is, that's spelled out in there.
It brings up an interesting point, what you were talking about, Bill. We may be, right now, we have a contract attorney for the city. We may be charged for an attorney until things settle down. So that's probably
Yeah,
something
all
that
that's
we
to be
should.
determined, but I just am very cautious of that. We have limited income,
No,
and we
if-
don't want to be
if-
spending money that we don't have.
Yes, and the role that we discussed to them on the phone was special counsel to the board.
Correct.
Not
Yeah.
general.
Okay, good. That's all I'm saying.
Currently Mr. Kemp is out. We don't know how long that will be. And when I first joined the board, we had, Corey was here. He was contracted with the city. We paid for his time that he was here.
He had a contract with the city and a contract with the authority. He was working both sides.
Correct. But there was a contract, he was paid for his time. We would make the decision whether or not to utilize, if the city goes forward with contracting, if they feel the need, they have to bring a contract lawyer on board for whatever reason. In Mr. Kemp's absence, then we would have to decide, do we want to go with that same firm or attorney, or just go ahead and just start the relationship and engage with this firm? It may just come down to economics. It may just be for general stuff. If we're being charged $200 an hour versus $400 an hour, we can have that discussion, decide what's best for us at that time and what we're dealing with. I mean, we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's down the road.
Yep.
Okay.
That's complicated.
So I'll do it.
Okay.
That's all good.
All right. So anything more on that? Again, Joseph and Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate that. There's no unfinished business right now. New business, recording secretary discussion. This is something Jack asked to be put on the agenda.
I asked for it to be put on the agenda because I have no qualms about what this brief check is doing with our notes. Absolutely none. However, I don't think it's appropriate for a city board member to be the recording secretary. And I would look to the recording secretary that we would hire or engage to be simply recording secretary, and then make sure that the website is updated. Because once again, we have a sitting member responsible for the website. And we as commissioners are supposed to sit here and look at what the staff does and either approve or disapprove it, or what they look at the actions. It's awfully hard, and I've been a recording secretary before, having been a board. It's awfully hard to engage with the board while you're writing all this stuff down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for one, I would like us, I think the easiest thing to do is explore with the city. If they have staff that'd be willing to do that for us and reimburse the city. We have the funds. I'm not asking for this thing to be done for free. I just think it's something we need to do so that we get full participation with everybody, and they're not worried about other things that are, who said what or whatever else for the cameras.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm a secretary on 2 boards, but I'm not a member on those boards, and that's how I can be effective at it. And as far as the expenditure, it's not so much we're paying somebody to take notes, we're paying somebody so that we can have the full participation of the vice chair, which is a valuable thing for the board. So that's why I think it makes sense.
Well, and as I'm doing the minutes, sitting here, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that we also are being recorded, and we have all of that. So, it seems like if you do a recording secretary, what you need to get down is not so much what everybody says on every topic. It's more the decisions that are made, the thing, that's pretty much what you need down in the minutes. And, we put on the website, I'd have to check and make sure it's updated, but in the minutes, we always put the link to the recording. So, it seems to me that we could be getting redundant if we end up doing written minutes and we have the recording. So, I think, like I said, the written minutes, if we're going to do a recording secretary, it needs to be recording the actions that the board is taking.
And Cindy, what you're talking about is exactly what council and the remaining, I think all the remaining boards and commissions do is their action minutes. So it just says Joe Blow made a motion to, that's not you, Joe. It's another Joe. Board member X made a motion to paint the wall pink and was seconded by board member Y, and the vote was 5-2 with, A and B, in the minority. And that's all it is. And public comment is summarized. Citizen A testified about mediums, whatever it is. That's what you get on the city minute. It has the video for reference, but that's not the official record. So I think we'd be well served to go to that format. It's consistent for the citizens of the city to have the same kind of process at each board and commission and council throughout the entire organization. And even though we're a separate organization, that's seamless to our citizens.
If we go, sorry.
I'm going to take a different point of view from somebody who has researched. If I had to go back to a recording in 1980, 1990, I don't know that I'd have the technology to play it, but there were minutes of all of the Urban Renewal Authority meetings and comprehensive minutes so you could understand why they refinanced the bonds, what was that issue, all the way through. And the recordings are not reliable. They're not always
Audible?
well, audible but not understandable. And we sit here and we vote, but there's no hand raised, there's no real accounting of it. So if there's a split vote, you don't know who voted how, if you go to the video recordings. We have a history going back to 1980 of minutes that are comprehensive. And anybody who's trying to do any research or even just to look back to kind of understand what we're doing, it's much easier to read a set of minutes than it is to go and pull up a video. You are making an assumption that everybody has the technical skills to do it, and you make an assumption that everybody has the technology to do it. When we have written minutes, they're available for anybody who wants to read them. And it's, even for our own look back,
So,
it's much easier to go back and look at a written copy of something and try to understand why we did what we did. Now, there's a big gap in Urban Renewal Authority in the last few years because they didn't take action. They didn't do anything. They just have a recording. And we've never gone back and accessed them to find out why they did some of the things that they did. It's too cumbersome. We need something that goes beyond just the action minutes so that people can read what we're doing, developers get a feel for how we operate. To me, it's imperative. Minutes mean minutes, not action minutes.
If I may, so I don't have a strong opinion about that one way or the other, but I definitely agree with Jack
Yeah.
that a board member shouldn't be doing the minutes. Whether they're simplified minutes or these detailed minutes, I think this is a very wise thing to be exploring as to whether there is somebody who is assigned to be a secretary, who could be engaged. I don't know if that person exists. I mean, I really don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know.
It used to be.
Our bylaws have in there that the board can appoint a recording secretary. It doesn't say that person is part of the board or it's hired. It just says appoint.
Yeah.
And when this came up 3 years ago, the board, Carol stepped up and said that's what she wanted to do, and the board went along with that. My concerns, and this is what's been brought to my attention on a few occasions, is whoever you have doing the minutes, there is the possibility of flavoring the minutes if you're favoring one topic or another. And that's been, again, this has been brought to me a few times in the past on our minutes. We've spent time trying to correct the minutes. We still don't have the corrected minutes from December in the written form. This board has talked about, several of the members have brought up about, wanting to move forward and doing things efficiently. I personally do not believe that having these types of minutes that are sometimes questionable and subjective, when you have recorded minutes, we're required to have action item minutes where we record our action things in writing, like motions and such. We're not required to have these types of minutes that we've been doing for the past couple of years. I am more comfortable with action item minutes and the videos. I think that then you don't get into, did so-and-so flavor it because they feel one way or another, or if they don't like this person or not. You don't get those type of comments. They can go to the video, they can see that person, how they speak, their body language and so forth. They know what that person's intent was. I agree with Bill that it also is in line with what the city council and the other boards and commissions are doing. This is what our neighbors, the citizens of Littleton, that they want to see. That's what they go to. I don't think there's anything wrong with us being uniform with that. No one's dictating we have to do that. I think we all know that we can vary from what the city council and the other boards can do. I just don't see an issue with not doing something different just because we can. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to what does the average citizen who says, I'm interested in what Lyft is doing, how do I find that information? And they go to and they find it just like they do with the historical board, the city council, and all the other boards and commissions out there. So that's kind of the direction I would like to see this. Whether that's somebody on the board who does if we go to action item minutes, it doesn't matter either way. We can have that discussion with city council and the city to see if there is staff that we can retain to do that and reimburse the city for their time. I'm open to either way.
And Kevin, when you say that, I sit there looking on action minutes because they're right here. And I imagine I'm not the only one who does this, but like roll call, all present. The minutes were approved 7-0. Financial report was approved 7-0. We had a committee report on these things. That's what action minutes are. Right. It tells the work that the board did. It doesn't show all the reasoning behind it. It doesn't show the thought process. They're action minutes. These are the actions taken. It's, that's, if you're interested in that, you can go back and listen if there's a specific point. And that's the way council does it. I don't think that puts the onus that, you were talking about. A lot of us, I think, agree. And Carol, thanks for doing this for years because I know it takes a lot of concentration to do that. I've done that. And it's hard. The action minutes, I think, it's usually at a transition point. You're finished with that item. You're going to the next item. You can write the vote down and that's it. I sat on council for 2.5 years and I have every vote. a file. I don't know why I still have a file, but I do. So, it's an easy thing to do. It would not cost us a lot of money, especially if one of us doesn't. It's right here.
I've taken minutes for us before, and I'm doing it tonight. And, I'm not writing down everything that you guys say, and if I want to have some of that, I have to go back and watch the tape. See, so it's like I'm watching the tape to basically come up with written minutes. And to me, it's really redundant. And that's why I would vote for the action item minutes, and then you could have a few sentences about the discussion, or, even use bullet points about the discussion. We discussed this and this and this, we talked about the attorney and that kind of thing, and, decided that Joseph is going to come back at the next meeting and bring us, more information and come up with a possible contract language, that kind of thing. So, to me, that's important to go into a written minutes. But,
And I think the other thing, it depends on how concisely it can be stated, but one of the best things I think minutes provide is the why this was done, because it puts it into a context, because we look at all this stuff and think, well, why the heck did they do that? And it doesn't do us a lot of good to go 5 minutes and say, okay, they voted for it, they passed it, but there was some reason 5 years ago that they did X, and it wasn't just because they woke up that morning and think, hey, I'm going to do X. And so before you make a change or walk away from something or just follow something, because that's the way it's always been done, it's so helpful to go see what was this responding to. So to the extent that action minutes can still show, the why, and you do run a bit of risk of that, the flavoring or the whatever, but as long as we can all view that as a board, and it's abbreviated, then I think we can maintain that efficiency a little more than we have had.
If I might.
I like Jack's idea of going back and finding to see if there's somebody who can come in and do recording minutes from city staff for that, and then we pay for that time. I think that would not keep us, that would keep us away from the flavoring and that type, and we can basically kind of give that person instructions on exactly what we want action items, but we also want, a couple sentences about what led to that action item and that type of thing. And I think that would work really well.
I was just going to throw in that the great thing about that is the concept of flavoring might be merely a perception, but having a recording secretary who is not a commissioner would mean that we are shielded from that somewhat, because there's no particular reason for the secretary to.
In theory, yes.
You're at least more shielded from that.
So you mean, we're the secretary.
And when I say that, I'm not saying, that Carol intentionally did that. I think sometimes when you're trying to take the minutes, and I've been in that position too, where I was an officer of a union, I was a corresponding secretary, I had to take all the minutes, and it's hard to be part of the engaged discussion, but yet try to capture everything, and then later on you're thinking, this is what it was said, and you may not capture the full thing because you were engaged in that discussion, where in another presentation you weren't engaged mentally to give your 2 cents worth, so you were focused on what the discussion was, and you're able to capture that.
And you lose out. You lose out as a commissioner.
Right. So I don't, like I said, the concern's been raised to me a few times, and I've not known how to deal with that, and maybe that's part of what we do, is the answer, is that we reach out to the city, see if there is some staff that they would recommend that would do this, so we don't have to put a Craigslist ad out and,
I would formulate a motion for that, since it's already on the agenda, we can. But before I do it, I'd like to would you reach out, or Cindy, would you reach out to the city because that would be part of the motion?
I would, I think we've already determined that with these types of things that the chair should, and I don't have a problem doing that.
I don't think you need a motion to inquire with the city.
Not to inquire, well,
Why don't you inquire and
To see
work
what
with
the
that?
why don't- yeah.
We'll do that. I'll
Bring it back
inquire
next
and
month.
we'll come back and then, because if they say, okay, James, yes, we can do that, and Jane Smith or Joe Billy Bob, I won't say, will be that person, then we can make the motion to appoint that person as the recording secretary for us. I mean, that's what we need to do. Then we can do what the charter allows us to do, which is appoint that. Does that make, I will reach out to the city and I'll hopefully have something next month.
Good.
All right.
And while we're on the subject of recording secretary, you mentioned we don't have the December, and this is a situation that I found myself in where we approved minutes, understanding that I would go back and listen to the tape and amend them, and then I was asked to have members of this body approve, and I can't do that without violating the open meetings law. And I decided I would pass out and just take a minute and read. The italicized is the new language, and it was important for me to bring this to the body because it's not just Bill Hoppings. You had asked me to make the correction, but Jack Rychecki was involved in the discussion as well, so, and Kevin Sealer. So that ended up me adding something beyond.
So you added more than what was approved to add at the time?
Bill asked me to clarify the discussion around this topic.
What his comments were regarding that topic, yes, that was what the motion, the amendment to the motion to accept the minutes from that meeting. There was an amendment proposed to capture what he has said, and that was supposed to, have you added more to this?
What I did was I listened to the video,
Okay.
and to me, it was, a segment on this subject, and I completed the minutes for that topic.
Okay,
Otherwise, it would have stopped midway through.
okay, so we'll take this under consideration.
I don't want it, we've already voted on
Yeah,
the
we're
minutes.
good?
So what I need to know is if there's anybody who has strong objections.
Okay.
If they do, then I need to know that, and then we can bring it forward at the next meeting. But I would suggest that we never get ourselves in this situation again. It's too difficult.
Yeah, no,
Are you looking for comments on this?
No, I
What
just,
do we-
all I want, if somebody has objections to this language, they need to speak up, and then we'll have to figure out what we do. If they don't, then I will submit them to Sandy in a final copy.
Okay, let me comment then, tell me if this is what you're looking for, because first of all, in the minutes it says having thought, I don't think things go in, it's a said or not, but, although I'm happy to have,
They prepared at the meeting.
I'm happy to have the word thought next to my name. But,
Like I said, that's not a
I
problem.
think the original misunderstanding was that I did make a comment that we should have conversation about governance issues and certain protocols. It was misunderstood, I think, at that time that my comment related to the outcome of the election. What I was trying to say was, since the election is over, why don't we make sure our governance issues are in compliance with everybody else's? And that relates to the minutes issue that we just discussed. So that's all I was after in that. Now, I can't sit here 3 months later and tell you exactly what my words were.
This is pretty
But
much
this
what
is,
your words
if
were.
that's
Yeah.
what I said, that's what I said. But
Quotes
that's, so I,
right, you,
I listened and transcribed multiple times in order to make sure that I had this to reflect, because I was in a situation of submitting them without the approval of the body. So I was very careful in
Yeah.
what I put here.
and I think Nixon said, I'm not sure that what you think you heard is what I meant to say. So, that's where,
I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on anyone's.
that's why action minutes stuff. But anyway, what do you want us to do? Is this the way you've corrected them?
This is
Because
this
I'm
is
not
what I
gonna dispute
have
what I
right
said.
now. I have not finalized those because I was asked to have this members of this body approve what I was going to submit to Cindy, and I can't do that without violating the open meetings law. And it put me in a situation where I don't feel like I can submit this to Cindy and have her post it as the approved minutes.
Okay, because I think when we used to have, in other boards I've served on, if you could correct minutes based on intent. You know, if you understand that you're not going to deny what you said at a meeting, but it would be more clear, for example, to have it say, Hoppings indicated that Lyft should have a briefing to be certain that our protocols are like other boards and commissions. That was the intent of that statement. I'm not arguing with what I said or your transcription. I'm just saying that's what.
The election had nothing to do with it.
The election-
The election was over, but you wanted to have
This conversation. Now that the
Right.
election
About recent
Now the
election,
election is- right.
about
Now that
governance
that's
issues.
behind us, let's talk about governance.
Yeah,
That was
okay.
the intent.
And I'm just trying to be true to what was actually said, because my commitment at the meeting was that I would go back and listen to the tape and reflect what I heard on the tape.
Well, maybe we need to get a consensus from the board about how we want to handle it. Do we want to have what was actually said, or what the intent was to say? What, there's,
The way I saw it is that, there was an amendment made that what you intended to say would be corrected. I guess my question is, because if it does, then we're done with this issue. If this doesn't, I guess then what I need, if you don't think this reflects capture what you were trying to say, I think we'll open it up next time on the minutes to go back. You come forward with the language you wanted to say that you feel indicates what you were talking on at that point, and then we're done with it.
because I think you could eliminate 4 words and have it corrected. And that would be after briefing, delete the 4 words on the recent election about outcome. So then it would say Hopping thought, and you can correct that word if you wish. Lyft should have a briefing about governance issues. City Council has yada yada. And the rest of the paragraph I think that's clear.
Okay.
Well, there's some, if I may jump in here, I wouldn't have said what I said if you hadn't have brought up the election. So I know you brought up the election.
I did bring up the election, Jack. I said now that the election is over. I don't know that I said that, but that was my intent, was now that the election is over, it's time to talk about governance. So that was the intent. So it's the board's discretion. So. Mr. Chairman.
We have a resolution.
If we can live with this in the minutes, then we're done.
Okay. I consider this done.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Okay. We had public comment, second public comment. Again, this time that anybody would like to come forward to share their thoughts or any comments they may have at this time, this would be the time to do so. Again, state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to come forward? Okay.
Happy Valentine's Day, all. Jeannie Erickson, I live in District 1. FYI, the owners of Columbine Square own other properties in Colorado. Just letting you know that.
Okay, thank you.
I totally agree with, and the other thing about that is that it's their job to know urban renewal, not our job to teach it to them. I totally agree with hiring a recording secretary. It should not be a board member. Board members do need to be able to participate. Going back to recordings can be very cumbersome. The yays, nays, and whys should be in print. Another thing that happened tonight that got me thinking, I would hate to see this board be used as a backdoor way for a developer that doesn't really need gap financing to use urban renewal to get the zoning they want. My little brain thinks once in a while. Especially losing commercial retail to apartments. Listening to comments tonight has made me think this could be a real possibility for a developer to just get the zoning they want because they may not get it through the Planning Commission and City Council. Please be aware and be cautious for us citizens. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Let's see, a couple of things. I'm Pam Chapman, still live a block and a half from here. So I'm going to make a suggestion about minutes, and I am going to say the decision by council several years ago to go to action minutes was wrong. The vote was 4-3, and it should not have been made. Video is not a good record, and it is so cumbersome for everyone to access. You have to listen to hours or jump back and forth, and it is not 100% accurate. My suggestion is to get transcription software and make transcripts. You can't be accused of bias. It's all in writing. It's searchable. You can skim the document. If you want to look at one member's comments, you can do that. You can't do that in a video. The city needs to get transcription software. It should have done that from, the 4 years they've been doing this bad thing without all minutes. So maybe you can move them in that direction. We need transcription software. Get a transcript of the discussion. I'm alarmed about the process discussion, but let me say a couple of things. The Bellevue corridor is not the guiding document until the new comp plan is complete. The current comp plan is the legal document. I am disturbed greatly by City Council and Planning Commission and other people saying, oh, there's no document now. We can disregard our old plan because it's old, and this is wrong. We have a comp plan and we must respect it legally, and that is it. The second thing about the process is what I want to ask you to do is consider cases, and this is the way that usually things are developed like this. You need to figure out the value of your process, and primarily I think that's to prevent failure for all parties. And then you want to achieve a viable and in fact successful project, a win-win-win. And thirdly, you might want to have a process that's easy for applicants, but I think that's way down there. So when you do cases, I want you to consider what if the developer is wrong? And that's what happened with the Riverfront Authority. The proposal was wrong. They couldn't do what the market, the thing that they provided did wasn't supported by the market. What if the city is wrong for money or the scope of the project? So you want a process that catches those cases, and when you make your process, you talk through. In this case, does the process catch it? In this case, does the project catch it? And the other thing I wanted to say was, I don't understand the uncertainty here. There are limits for what this city can do with urban renewal. And I don't understand why, I'm sure there's experts out there who would say, Littleton, this is too big for you to chew. You already referred to the concept that we only have 20 years left. That limits our options. I would like to see the boundaries of what we can do and what we can't, and what the minimum case is. And I'm sure we can hire an expert who could at least bound this problem, and I would like to know that, and I think all of us deserve to know that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Yes, I said. I said it vociferously.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much. I hope you're not sleeping on the couch tonight, Jason.
Sure.